Hello, and welcome to the ComSpark Magazine interview series. I am Jacob Santelli with Renovis. We are an Ohio-based IT staffing and consulting group. We are here partnering with CDO Magazine in a series of interviews with local leaders. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Sophia Moore, the Chief Innovation Officer, and Troy Aparicio, Senior Director of Data and Analytics, both from Central Ohio Transit Authority. So welcome, and if you could, just start off by telling us a little bit more about your professional stories and how you came to be with COTA.
Great. Thank you, Jacob. Really excited that we have the opportunity to talk with you today. Let me just tell you a little bit about myself. So I'm the Chief Innovation Officer at COTA. I've been here for a little bit over a year. And I think a lot of times people, at first glance, when I tell people what I do, they're like, what is innovation and transit, and how did that come together for you? And I think it's interesting because my background, I have a bachelor's and master's in industrial and systems engineering from Ohio State. And what I really focused on there was understanding how people use technology. That was my primary focus. And how can we optimize technology to make sure that for what people are doing in their everyday lives, it really connects and really makes sense and they can actually use it. So that has been the focus of my career. I worked at IBM and worked on their personal computers and worked in their usability lab and understanding and watching people and how they use their systems. Came back to Columbus and worked in consulting for quite a bit of time. And then had the opportunity to go to NetJets, where I started in IT as a business analyst, but eventually started to focus more on the business side, where I could understand how do we develop strategies for people. So focus on being the director of product development at NetJets, of understanding what are the packages and services that we offer our customer, and then eventually became vice president of owner experience and design and strategy, where we really took all these different pieces of information and developed what are the strategies for improving the owner experience. And that led to COTA, where bringing in all of those different pieces of information and understanding how do we design for the community where Columbus is such a growing place, and how can we make sure that Columbus continues to be that great place to live, but with the expected growth that we're about to have, how can we make sure that mobility is at the heart of that all, and that as we continue to grow, that we look at how mobility impacts the region, and that's where technology and innovation comes in, as well as data, so we can learn from what the city is experiencing and develop new opportunities and services for the community.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you very much. Troy?
Yeah, and so my background has been primarily in data over the course of my career. Started at the Chamber of Commerce here in Columbus, so I say I'm a Columbus native, a little bit of a military brat, so I've moved around a lot. But starting here, working for Bill Lafayette here in Columbus at the Columbus Chamber of Commerce, and where I moved out and worked in Silicon Valley for a little while. So took a little detour and deviation from data and analytics, where I worked with intellectual property. But found my way back into data and analytics, where I worked for a company called 4C. And that company was really a voice of customer company where we helped clients all over the globe, big and small, around understanding who their customers are and how to understand customer satisfaction. From there, I worked at a company called MRM McCann, a part of the IPG network, where I helped to found and develop a global analytics practice that served clients like GM, among many, many others, where we developed practices across North America, South America, Asia, the Middle East, and really supporting a global view of our client's business. We developed an entire analytics stack. I was one small piece of a larger team, but we developed those capabilities to inform our client's business. From there, I left MRM McCann and worked here in Columbus, Ohio at L Brands, where I helped to transform and update the web analytics practices at L Brands. So we laid the foundation for web analytics and A/B testing, and from there, really was reached out to join the COTA team and on which I found the what I would call the strategic goals to align with data and analytics, not only from a documentation perspective, but looking at it from a leadership perspective and having the backing of leadership to really drive that change and really influence our customers. And that's really what spoke to me to join COTA, is really not just building a data analytics practice, but creating data-driven decisions to help our customers as we move forward as an organization.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it's really interesting to see where you have been and how you got to COTA. On that note, right, I think COTA is a place in town that a lot of folks may have a narrow view of or know a bit about, but are starting to hear a lot more about when it comes to technical growth and initiatives. For either one of you, if you could maybe give folks a little bit more detail about the story of COTA and specifically the innovation group and what's going on there.
Sure. So as you mentioned, I think if you're from Columbus, you know what COTA is. It's the Central Ohio Transit Authority. The region that we're in Columbus is a 1.2 million people region. The focus on public transportation has been growing very much. And actually in 2019, COTA had the highest ridership that it ever had in 31 years with about 60,000 passenger trips a day, which equals about 19 million a year. And I think if you go back to what I was saying earlier about the growth of Columbus, we're expected to be about a region of 3 million people in 2050. And if you think about our infrastructure, that public transportation needs to be a big part of it, even if you do not use public transportation. If you think about cities such as Austin or Nashville that experience growth before Columbus and at a little bit of a faster rate, if you've been to any of those cities in the last few years, they are full of congestion because they actually did not look at how do we actually move people. And we really are starting to use that term a lot here about mobility and making sure that it's about mobility of people and it's not just transportation, right? Mobility gets you to things. It gets you to your work. It gets you to services. It gets you around town. And if we have congestion here, it actually affects all of us. So that is where the innovation division came into play. Is public transportation was probably one of the last industries to embrace the technology. But we recognize that that's the future of making sure that how we move in the region is a big part of that. And COTA is really focused on that, is how can we look at public transportation today and look at it differently in the future so it actually meets the needs of our community. And we've done so by making sure a big part of that is to make sure that we are focused on data and analytics. And that's where part of the innovation team is the data and analytics team, where if we want to make sure we're meeting the needs of the community, we need to understand the community. We need to understand who our customers are and how they're riding and where do they need to go. We need to make sure that we are set up internally to be a more customer-driven organization that takes that data and uses that information to provide new and unique services. I think one thing that sometimes happens with innovation, everyone thinks that it's all about coming up with the latest and greatest thing. And actually, I think innovation is really more about how are things functioning today and can you look at it in a different way and provide a service that people may not have expected. And I think data and analytics is going to be a big part of making sure as we innovate that we take that data and making sure that it actually provides us good insight into what future services could be.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you very much. You bring up a great point in terms of the increased focus on data, and that's kind of my next question is could you tell us maybe about some of the exciting initiatives you have to better leverage data, both for an impact on your customers, internally, and for the community?
Sure, and Troy can definitely kind of add on to this. I think it would be remiss not to talk about, what's happened in 2020 with COVID. And I think that is actually where the data helped us tremendously in 2020, more than it ever did before. We used that data to help structure what our pandemic response was. We made sure to review it daily and understand where are the needs in the community. For those especially, many people are not riding public transit right now because many people are working from home. But there are groups in the community that 100% rely on public transportation to get them to wherever they need. And we wanted to make sure that we evaluated that data to understand where the neighborhoods that needed public transportation, making sure that we were serving those that really depended on it during the pandemic, because that's a really important part of our customer base and understanding that we're serving that need. Other things that I think that we've been doing regarding data is looking at transportation in a different way. So we had a couple of innovative things that we did during the pandemic. One was distribution of food. So especially early on in the pandemic, there was a huge need because everything was shut down. So we actually had Bob Evans Food, another local company in town, said, hey, we have about 20,000 meals that we can provide to COTA if you can help distribute them. And again, this is where we used our resources in a completely different way, understanding where they knew that we knew where the need was. And on top of that, we had the assets to be able to deliver all of these meals in a timely fashion. So it's something that I don't think you would expect from a public transportation organization, but that we're really looking at, how we can serve the community. Some other things that we're doing is as we're studying our customers, there were certain areas of town where we actually had to reduce service. But as we were talking to our customers, they were saying, I really rely on COTA. So COTA in September actually was the first transit authority to launch a section of town that is full-time on-demand COTA, where it's basically taking one of our 30-foot buses, and when you're standing at a stop, it actually allows you to call that bus on demand, just like you would for any other Uber or Lyft or anything like that. So you imagine, again, this is where we were using data where we saw that there was a need, but at the same time, because of all the restrictions, we were only allowed, if it was a fixed route service, we could only do it every 60 minutes. But then used innovation to say, hey, you know what, let's look at this area because there's a lot of jobs in this area and a lot of things where people need to get around. And let's try something completely different. So we've tried that on-demand service. It's really going well. We're seeing increase in ridership every week on the service. And we're actually now using that. It's actually providing better service to everybody. We're currently experiencing about a 13-minute response time versus where you might have a planned time of 60 minutes. So we're actually we're able to meet the needs of the customers even more, but then on top of it, provide the service that we need and then learning how they're using the service. So it's really a win for everybody that's involved.
Awesome. Yeah, that sounds like something that's going to potentially continue to expand for you guys. Troy, maybe you could jump in with either that or any other initiatives as you look at 2021 and beyond that your group is focused on.
Yeah, so I think Sophia did a great job of describing how we use data and how we translate that into innovative products and solutions that we offer to our client base, right? I think that's the key, right? It's not just about taking the data and looking at it, it's actioning on it, right? Providing Columbus City Schools with breakfast and lunch distribution, right? It's, as she talked about, with partnering with Bob Evans to provide, I think it was like 20,000 meals to local shelters and pantries. And then creating new innovative things where I think we're the only full service bus on demand in the United States, right? And we're using and leveraging data that we have that exists within the organization to create these partnerships and reach out with our community, but to also to provide those additional services.
Thank you for the input, Troy. I know one of the things that COTA is looking to focus on upcoming is within the artificial intelligence space. Maybe one of you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. We are really, really excited about this project regarding artificial intelligence and how it's going to improve the mobility and safety in the Columbus community. So we are going to be launching a project that we got with an FTA grant on a platform called Waycare. And Waycare has been something that has been launched in other cities where it's basically taking multiple data sources from disparate agencies that weren't talking before. So for example, in the Las Vegas area, they are taking their highway patrol, their public transit system, other different agencies where it used to be that they would talk kind of separately but now it's integrating all of their different pieces of data into one platform. In addition to that, it's going to be integrating things such as Waze, which are public platforms for understanding traffic and congestion in a community. And it's bringing all of those pieces together into one piece and using artificial intelligence to be predictive about where traffic, congestion, and crashes may be. So if you start to think about that, that is extremely powerful. And it's been amazing to see what's happened in Las Vegas, where they've had certain stretches of highways have a reduction of 17% in about a year in highway crashes because of being able to be more predictive about that information. And in addition to that, because of the predictive information about all the data that's coming in, they actually are being proactive with placement of vehicles, such as like a police vehicle, so they can actually respond faster. And they're actually seeing we actually just recently talked to them in November, they're seeing a 9-minute reduction in response times. So when you think about a crash or an accident, especially where there might be injuries, every minute counts. And this piece of technology that we're going to be rolling out is going to be a big part of it. And where we're really being innovative is that COTA is the first transit agency to be able to take the lead on it. It's usually a larger city or governmental entity that takes charge of it. But we, again, are focused on mobility in the region. And when I say that, it's a lot more than just the buses. We're making sure that we have that mobility set up in the region. And we are bringing together different agencies across the central Ohio area so we can get their pieces of data and integrate it into this platform so we can start to look at what is the overall mobility in the region. And I think we're just so excited about a project like this because I don't think this is something that people would expect from a transit agency. But on top of it, it's really going to help our community in the reduction of crashes, congestion, and hopefully, injuries and fatalities as well. So we're really excited to be leading and being part of that project.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you very much. Troy, anything on that project you'd like to add?
Yeah, I think it speaks to our broader community partnership, right? When we talk about the success of COTA, a lot of times, and I think Sophia did a great job of articulating this, a lot of times people think of COTA as a bus company. And as we grow and try to meet that need of mobility, working with local municipalities, working with Ohio State, working with MORPC and other groups, it helps us define and identify those mobility options to best serve our community.
Absolutely. Yeah, and it's interesting during Sophia's explanation, I heard that you will be the first. And I hear that having learned more about COTA in the last few years. You guys seem to be the first to do a lot of stuff. So that's always a good claim, and that's exciting for you guys. But the other thing that I think is a consistent theme throughout the conversation so far is a focus on community and customers, which would be the next two things I'd love to jump into. So I think we were kind of on the community subject, and Troy mentioned a couple of partnerships, but maybe if you could kind of jump to that and dive in a little bit more on the local community partnerships that you do have or upcoming initiatives in that space. What's COTA doing with the Central Ohio community?
Sure. And like Troy mentioned, with the growth that we talked about in Columbus, actually the community partnerships are more important than ever. There could be 1 million more cars on the highway if we were to continue to grow the way we're growing right now. And so we want to really make sure that we look at how we move people more efficiently and more effectively. And I think that is where COTA is now at the table, where it may not have been at the past. In the past, I think with economic development, public transit has been an afterthought, right? We build something and then, we got to get people to this place. And they hadn't thought about how do we build a city where mobility and transportation are a part of the puzzle, not an afterthought afterwards. And that's where we have really focused very much on community partnerships, because now COTA is not only at the table, but we're now starting to lead some of those development efforts as Central Ohio continues to grow. And I think that should make people from Columbus really excited that, the city as a total is really looking at the growth and looking at every piece of it. Because I think we've seen some of the things that have happened in the past where city or construction decisions or development decisions actually prohibit some people from being able to take advantages from the growth and prosperity of the city. But if we look at the growth overall of everybody in our community, we can all prosper, and that actually leads to the larger economic development of the Central Ohio area and making sure that all that can take advantage and we're not leaving everybody behind. And so I think the community partnerships have been really important. Like Troy mentioned, we're working very closely with the city. We're doing a lot of things with MORPC. With our AI projects, we're making a lot of connections with a lot of other agencies. But we're also making sure that we're working with groups like Columbus City Schools and COSI, and also with technology companies to make sure that, again, we're not leaving everyone behind. And one thing I missed is COTA's mission is moving every life forward. And I think it's such a great mission because it doesn't mean just moving them like physically, but if you have mobility, you have access to things. You have access to prosperity. You have access to jobs. You have access to food. And that means we're progressing your life and we're progressing your prosperity. And that in terms meaning progressing the prosperity of the entire region. And I think that's what just kind of makes all of this so very exciting.
Absolutely. It's got to be exciting. And I'm sure a lot of folks hearing this will agree to know that your potential customer base is going to double. Always good news, always good news. And being able to work with those partnerships, can only, better their experience. So maybe that's the next thing we jump into is I know you guys have a really interesting view of your customers and try to really identify them and understand them. Could you talk about maybe how you leverage data to do that?
Sure. Troy, you want to talk a little bit about some of the work we're doing with understanding our customers more?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say that COTA has always conducted sentiment surveys, right? And it helps us understand who our customers are and what their needs are. I think that this year with COVID and everything that is going on with the world, we're taking a deeper look at our customers and wanting to learn about them more. And so we're taking some steps to have ongoing measurement to understand who our customers are and to provide a deeper view or a deeper lens, or a better lens, I should say, around who our customers are. And those things include like, how has the pandemic, impacted them? Have they lost hours of work at their job? Things like that help us understand what our customer needs are. I think that's the key piece when we're talking to our partners and we're talking with potential agencies that we can work with. Is taking that lens of our customer and looking at our demographics and looking at who our customers actually are. And we will continue to drive towards a better lens of our customer. We're talking about going from a sentiment survey to ongoing measurement, and then drafting a better view holistically from how they actually communicate with us from a social media perspective or a contact center perspective, and moving deeper in from demographics to who the customer actually is, understanding customer loyalty and things like that, where I don't think a public sector company or even COTA has looked at that type of data before, right? Taking that customer lens is going to be vitally important, and we've already made vast steps to go down that path.
Sophia, anything you'd add in the customer space?
I think what's been really great about a lot of the work with the customer personas that our marketing team is doing is that it puts emotion and feeling behind who your customers are, right? It's not just about how many times they're riding, right? Or how often they're using our service. And I think sometimes organizations tend to do that. And I think that's natural because you want to understand how much your service is being used. But I think like Troy mentioned is have you been impacted by the pandemic? Are you still employed? Where are you going to use COTA? How often are you using it? All makes us understand who our community is. And I think in light of the pandemic specifically, I think we've all realized that we need to be a little bit more empathetic or understanding of what everybody is going through. And sometimes I think when, you're behind a desk, it's really easy to just kind of focus on your work. But being able to understand like who are our customers and who is in our community, and making sure that the services that we provide really meet their needs, and it's not just to innovate for innovate's sake, or the data might be, the hard data might be telling us one thing, but when you think about the people side of it, I actually think that COTA will be much better off by having this focus on not just data, but the people side too, to make sure that we are really fulfilling the needs that the community has.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you for that. That's excellent perspective that a lot of different industries and companies in the area can learn from. So thank you again. Jumping back as we start to wrap here, maybe to a 50,000-foot view, tell me a little bit more about what COTA's innovation group hopes to accomplish in the next few years.
Sure. So as I mentioned, we're really excited about one of our key projects with the artificial intelligence. With Troy joining COTA, really building out that data and analytics team. But some other exciting projects that we're working on is we're looking at an updated fare management system, where I think a lot of times people, when they see public transportation or, for example, a bus, you don't think of it as a 33,000-pound piece of rolling technology. But that technology actually is going to enable us to do lots of things and learn more about our customers. So we are rolling out a new fare management system, and that will start in 2021, where we're going to be able to offer multiple ways to be able to purchase COTA and buy COTA, either through purchasing it yourself, purchasing it in your organization, being able to purchase it at your local CVS or Walgreens, and really being able to understand who our customers are and expanding our reach. So we're really excited about how technology is going to be able to enable us to get even more reach and understand our customers even more. Then, as I mentioned, we're going to continue to be at the table as kind of Central Ohio looks at how we're growing. It's called the corridors, and how we're expanding our growth in the Central Ohio area. So that's going to be a large part where data and technology is going to be about how we grow the region and how transit can be part of that. So we're really excited to look at all of these different initiatives, and I think it's a really exciting time for where we're at because of where Columbus is growing, and really humbled and excited to be able to be part of that vision, and that the things that we're doing today will really, you'll start to see the impacts from that, 5, 10, 20 years from now. So it's an exciting time to be here.
Sure. Yeah, Troy, anything you'd add, maybe big picture or even specifically to yourself in terms of what you're hoping to accomplish here?
Yeah, and I think that we've talked about this a little bit during the course of the interview, is really transforming the way we operate at COTA and look to operate in the future, right? One of the key things is taking that message of our customer and providing a service that meets our customers where they are, right? We were talking about our customer personas, and I have a couple of key stats that may shock, but also helps us understand who our customers are. When we think about our customers from a COTA perspective, about a quarter of our customers have lost their job in the last year, right? About half have lost wages or hours in the last year. Additional stats, can be shocking where we look at the pandemic before of our customers, where about 40% made about $30,000 a year. That's climbed to about 60%, just under 60%. Right? So when we look at our customers and we offer our services, we have to keep that in mind. And using data and analytics as that voice of our customer to drive the actions, to drive our operation, is really where I find we will grow and excel as an organization as we take that view.
Awesome. Thank you very much, both of you, for the time, Sophia and Troy. And we look forward to seeing COTA progress in this space over the next months and years.
Thank you so much, Jacob. Really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.